to address the commission. The speaking slots are limited to 3 minutes, and I was wondering if you have any public comments related to topics that are not on the agenda today.
Yeah,
No? Not look like. The next item on the agenda is the written communications. Do we have anything written communication? No.
Nope, we do not.
Then we are right into old business. I don't think we have any old business, I guess.
No, but
Then our next item is new business, and that's really kind of the main topic of tonight. The topic is multimodal traffic data collection and usage. David, who has prepared for that topic?
yes, Vice Chair.
Thank you.
Moment, share.
What is this space? Looks good.
Different.
Very nice.
That's Skyline.
Oh,
I don't know.
My daughter took that picture. So
Oh, nice photo.
that is not the topic of my present. Got to share. So how do I? Oh, there we go. Okay, all right, we are set. Thank you, Vice Chair, Commissioners. So this evening I will give a presentation regarding the collection of multimodal use data for the purpose of monitoring and for project evaluation. So I will start off with kind of a summary of what type of data, traffic data, the Transportation Division currently collects and how it's collected and how often it's collected. So currently, the traffic data we collect falls into 4 general categories in terms of the frequency of collection. First, there's data that we only collect generally on an as needed or as requested basis. And this includes speeding complaints from the public and stop sign and crosswalk warrant analysis. For the speeding complaints, we would go out and collect obviously data regarding the speeds of vehicles on the streets, and for the stop signs and crosswalk warrant analyses, we would typically collect vehicle volume data as well as pedestrian data for the number of pedestrians crossing the street at the intersection. And we use that information to do the warrant analysis to see if we need a stop sign or crosswalk. Other data we collect, there's some types of data that we collect at regular intervals of time. Or specific periodic periods. These include our crossing guard warrant studies. We collect this data every 2 years, where we conduct pedestrian crossing counts and vehicle turning movement counts at several dozen intersections throughout the city so that we can rank those intersections in terms of priority so that we can assign our 16 crossing guards are funded by the city council. The VTA collects traffic counts as well every 2 years. These are vehicle turning movement counts, and these are done specifically at 14 intersections throughout the city that are on the congestion management program network. These VTA conducts these counts countywide. There are 14 intersections in Cupertino. There's many more throughout the county that they also collect the data for at the same time. And that's basically to assess the level of service at these intersections. And those are only collected during the PM peak hour for those intersections. And then they provide that data to Cupertino as part of their biannual congestion management program report. And then the third category is our engineering and traffic surveys, which are our means to establish or justify speed limits on the city streets. These have to be done every 7 to 10 years, depending on certain factors. And the data we collect from those surveys is generally vehicle speed data on each of the corridors over the course of 1 or 2 hours on a particular day on each of those streets. Occasionally, we'll also do volume counts on those streets because we need volume data in order to establish speed limits. But generally, we try to use volume data that's already been collected through other sources and not do it specifically as a part of the engineering and traffic survey effort. That'll probably change in this next round of engineering and traffic surveys where we're going to collect new volume counts on all of the streets as well. Other sources of data include developer traffic impact studies. These, we never know when these are going to come in. When a large development wants to build in Cupertino, they have to conduct a traffic study. And as part of that traffic study, generally the transportation division will require that they collect volume counts at intersections near the site that could potentially be impacted by traffic from the development, so that they can assess any operational deficiencies or level of service impacts that may result from the traffic generated by the new development. We also occasionally do link counts or street corridor counts citywide for vehicles and for bicycles. It's been a while since we've done the last one. Probably several years ago, 3 maybe years ago or so, we did a bicycle citywide link bicycle counts, and it's been even longer since we've done vehicles. And then finally, data that's collected on an ongoing basis. Collision data is collected by the state of California, and that's data that we have readily available to us that we can upload to our software that can categorize it, and we could filter it and gather all sorts of information about the collisions that are occurring throughout the state. And then intersection approach volumes at select signalized intersections where we have video detection, vehicle and bicycle, and in some cases pedestrian volume data is collected by the detection systems and stored, and then we can upload that data as needed past volumes at those intersections. It's only about 7 or 8 intersections currently that we have the capability of doing that, but we want to expand that. Now, in terms of how we collect the data, there are several different ways, as you can imagine, that we collect the data. So if we want to collect vehicle speeds, the 2 primary ways of collecting vehicle speed data are pneumatic hoses and radar. So pneumatic hoses are just hollow rubber tubes that are placed across the lanes. I'm sure you've all seen those. They work by, you measure the distance between the tubes, then you place them on a street, and by the kind of time that passes between when the tire hits one and the tire hits the other, the software can determine the speed of the vehicle. You place these out, you leave them there for as long as you want, and they collect data continuously for as long as they're out there. They're fairly accurate. They can be less accurate on multi-lane streets because you can have several cars kind of all next to each other crossing the hoses at more or less the same time, and so it can't distinguish between lanes. But on smaller streets or lower volume streets, it's very accurate. They're fairly low cost. It's good because you can put them out there and leave them, and there's really no ongoing cost related to the duration. They collect the data automatically. They are subject to vandalism. It's fairly common for hoses to be pulled out either intentionally by somebody or cut if it's in a particularly bad neighborhood. Sometimes they just come loose if they're on high traffic areas, so they can be unreliable. Second method is radar. You see a picture of a radar gun there. These are done from a vehicle, an unmarked vehicle. You sit out there with the gun for a couple of hours and literally just write down the speeds of the vehicles as they pass by, as noted on the radar gun. These are, if it's used by someone who's experienced in its use, they are very accurate. You get good data from this, but they are resource intensive because you have to be there the whole time holding the gun, noting down the speeds. For volumes, similarly, we can use pneumatic hoses, and there you see pictures side of it. So these can measure volumes just as easily as they can measure speeds, and they have the same constraints. and concerns. There's also video or LiDAR, which can be used to count cars. These can be either temporary, you can move them around day here, day there if you want to collect different locations, or you can have permanent installations. These are accurate, and they can also be resource intensive because often they require somebody to look at the video following the collection period and actually note down the volumes. It depends on the type of system that's used. And then direct observation, where in the old days you'd hire the college students and they'd sit out in the lawn chairs on the corners with their clickers and count the cars that go by. So generally you only do this for a couple hours at a time because it takes a lot of people to do it. It can be fairly accurate if the people are paying attention. But again, it is resource intensive. Bike and ped volumes, very similar to vehicle volumes. We can do it with the hoses, video or LiDAR similarly, and also direct observations. Pedestrians are a little bit more challenging to do with hoses because you have to place them very carefully, and if someone steps over them, then you're not getting it. So you probably wouldn't rely on it too heavily for pedestrians, but for bicycles, they're great. And so for conflict studies, occupancy studies, compliance, and this is, for example, if you want to determine, look at near misses, or bikes and cars conflicting at a certain location because of the way it's been designed. Compliance, are people stopping at stop signs? Are people yielding at yield signs? Are people stopping behind the stop bar when they're at a stop sign? You generally either use video or direct observation in order to assess, to get data for those types of studies. There's a picture of one type of video camera system there on the right. And then travel time studies. This is when you want to determine how long it takes to go from one end of the corridor to the other. You would do this after, say, a signal retiming effort. You want to see if your signal timing adjustments have improved traffic flow. These are pretty much always done getting in an actual car and just driving up and down the corridor for several hours and noting how long it takes to go from one end to the other. You can either write down the times as you drive, or nowadays there's like GPS software that you can put in the vehicle that'll automatically record when you get to certain times, making it a little easier on the driver. The results can vary. With travel time studies, you'll find that, for a corridor that on average would take 6 minutes, sometimes it'll take 4, sometimes it'll take 8. You have to do a lot of runs to get good data because you want to take the average of all of them. If you just do 1 or 2, you're not really going to get ideas. So they can be very resource intensive. So for the purpose of measuring the success of transportation projects, the previous methods that I just outlined can be leveraged to inform a project evaluation program, where you can determine a project's effectiveness with respect to many different goals depending on the project. These include, has there been an improvement in safety? You can determine this by, is there a reduction in collisions, a reduction in near miss events? Have vehicle speeds been reduced? Have we increased bicycle or pedestrian activity along the corridor? Has the travel time improved? Has transit speed improved? Are people now more in compliance with the traffic laws? Cut through traffic. I don't hear too many complaints about that these days, but historically they've complained about a lot of people avoiding the major arteries in order to get from A to B, and they would cut through the neighborhoods. We would do a lot of studies of cut through traffic to try to minimize that. So that's something else that can be evaluated, how we reduce the number of the volume on the residential streets resulting from cut through traffic. And so what a program like that could involve is, you would gather before and after data, decide on what measures of success are useful for a particular project. For like a protected bike lane project, you would want to look at, have we increased safety for bicyclists? Have we increased bicycle ridership? Has there been any impact to travel time resulting from the project. For example, those are things we might decide to look at. San Francisco has a very thorough, comprehensive program related to project evaluation. And I just show this as a kind of a gold standard example of what can be done if you're in a large city and you have a lot of resources. What's shown is a page from one of the project documents on before and after study, the Golden Gate Avenue Safety Project, and you kind of see the little description of the project, a photo, and then down at the bottom are the results of the before and after studies. Average vehicle speed decreased 10%, more people are double parking. Number of bicyclists increased by 67%. So those are the three metrics they decided to look at. They did the before and after studies. That's how the results are presented. For San Francisco's program, as I mentioned, this can be resource intensive to collect and evaluate the data. They allocate a total of about one full-time employee just to the program. And they have an annual budget of about $250,000 to implement. For larger projects, this is also San Francisco, Venice quick build project. So you see they looked at vehicle speeds, vehicle volumes, pedestrian volumes, bike volumes, measured a lot of data in relation to each of those. The results are presented on 2 pages. Additional proposing, next steps based upon what the findings of the project evaluation. So I know there's been some interest in doing similar type of effort for Cupertino's projects. So in light of that, just some thoughts. And I didn't get my final bullet points there, but things to consider, resource and budgetary constraints. Obviously, Cupertino with a smaller staff doesn't have one full-time employee to devote to this, so we would have to scale the effort to the available resource. And then for any kind of program, there'd be a budget approval required by the city council, is because collecting the data does take money to either buy or purchase the counters and evaluate the data. The effectiveness horizon, many metrics may take years to adequately evaluate. So again, because Cupertino is somewhat small, on average, we have 1 fatality per year on our streets. So in order to see if, say, there's been an improvement in fatalities, you really have to look many, many years of data in order to see trends. Going from 1 to 2 in subsequent years is meaningless. But if you continue at 2, 10 years after being at 1 forever, then that's useful information. So considering it takes time to establish whether a project's been successful. And then information utility, the purpose must be articulated, and the benefits of having the program outweigh cost. And frankly, after the data is collected, then what? So we have this program, we collect this data. What do we do? How exactly does that inform future projects, or what do we change if we determine the bike lane project is moderately successful after 5 years? Does that help us at all in establishing the next list of projects, or what? So what exactly is going to happen to the data opportunities? And then a final point is that our active transportation plan, which is under development, is going to develop some thoughts for establishing a bike and ped count program for Cupertino, both short-term counts and long-term counts. And it's going to look at what kind of hardware softwares are available, how extensive the scope, all sort of the details that we would need in order to be able to make the decision what type of program to establish. So I was hoping, this is my last slide. So the discussion that I didn't put it on the slide. So the active transportation plan. short and long-term programs being. So the suggestions based on discussion tonight would be very helpful that to help inform what the active transportation plan is going to say about this program. So it's actually timely that we're talking about this because we're right at that point in the ATP development where we're thinking about that. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts on the information I've presented and where you feel the city should go with this, so that we can look at including that in our ATP recommendations, implementing, if you like, some kind of program in the future, or even if it's not a program, just establishing some thoughts on how we want to go about collecting data in the years to come. So, that. Okay, questions?
Thank you, David. Much appreciated. Wondering if there is any clarifying questions, comments from the commissioner.
I do have some questions on the position.
Mhm.
And
I think we should just clarify questions and then go back to deliberation afterwards.
so 16 crossing guards assigned to various intersections. Are they centered around schools or no? Are they being assigned to any intersection?
Well, generally they're around schools. Yeah, because I mean that's where the real demand and need is.
But even if we find, let's say, Bianza and Stevens Street crossing is really bad, and we won't necessarily assign a crossing guard there. Right?
Probably not because, for a couple of reasons. One, it's more of constant throughout the day, more or less. So it would cost a lot, and most of the people that cross there are old enough to know how to do it safely.
I figured.
Where's the cross? Where's the kids are a little bit more in need of help.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. So in the BTA congestion management bullet points, what does vehicle turning movements means? Like you said, we measure vehicle turning movements. So what exactly?
So that means that at any intersection, you've got 4 approaches to the intersection, right?
Yeah.
So for each approach, you'll measure the number of cars that turn left, the number of cars that go straight, and the number of cars that turn right. So you're collecting a total of 12 vehicle movements
And
at each intersection.
that's to decide, how to program those signals, or or like what are we trying to ascertain?
It is used for that, but for the purposes of the CMP, it's to determine the level of service. How much delay. So there's software where you put in the volumes that you count in addition to other parameters like the timing of the signals and other number of lanes, things like that. And so you can determine the average level of vehicle delay at these intersections.
Do we measure, how does either positively or negatively the turning movements get impacted by the actions of the city? Let's say, we do a bike lane somewhere and then all of a sudden, we created huge hindrance for people that make right turn, left turns and all that spaces, previously they were moving more freely. So do we measure that data at all? To see what's the impact of, positive, negative, of our actions?
So that the turning movement counts, for example, will consider that. So if there is a change in the number of lanes.
Yeah.
Or let's say, I know there's been concerns with some of our bike lane projects that at the intersections.
I'm particularly interested in, the Wolf and Stevens Street junction, that turn. I want to know what was the data before and what's the data now after we did those separated bike lanes.
Yeah.
Because that will tell us, are we helping people or are we creating, hindrances?
Yeah. So generally you would code the software, and you use engineering judgment in order to assign the number of lanes on an approach. And so in an intersection, say where you have a wide bike lane that can reasonably accommodate a right turning car. Different cities do it different ways, but you can code that as a right turn lane so that can contribute to the overall capacity of the intersection. If it's a narrow bike lane, let's say it's only 5 feet wide and very few cars are going to be able to squeeze by anyway. then you would not consider that as any kind of a right turn lane, and you would assume in the analysis that the right turning vehicles are in the same queue as the through vehicles in the right travel lane, and that would get taken into account. So it's very intersection specific on how that is incorporated into the analysis.
Okay.
And generally, the CMP intersections are only looking at, is the intersection level of service failing? You know, if it goes from, say, a level of service C to a C minus, in the grand scheme of things, those are all acceptable. It's only when an intersection actually fails where the average vehicle delay exceeds a certain amount that the red flags are raised.
Then you had something about, you know, developer traffic studies.
Mhm.
So when does that kick in?
Anytime a new development comes in.
What, can you quantify like the size of the development? Like, if somebody's building a duplex, you know, does it kick in? Or no, somebody's building a 20-unit condo, does it kick in? Or no, or a 2,000 unit, you know, development, when does it kick in?
So the size of the development generally it determines the scope of the study, not whether or not we get the study in the first place. So we will, you know, unless it's like a single family home, we will always require a study, but the larger the development, the more that we would require them to look at. And we have transportation study guidelines, which are on our website that have all the details about that. But our hands are tied now more than they used to be because the rules have changed in CEQA, and you're aware of this,
State law.
that we are not allowed to require any mitigation for basically levels of service, vehicle levels of service and vehicle delays are not considered an environmental impact under CEQA anymore. So we cannot require any kind of mitigation if there is an impact based on the development. We only can ask for that information for our information purposes for planning efforts, but we really can't have the developer do anything about it if they cause additional delay at intersections. It's not an impact under CEQA.
That's just sad, right? So the reason I'm asking this question is, you know, prior to this, you know, I was serving on the planning commission. I used to see these projects and they just pass by saying, oh, it's a minor, right? And every project is a minor project, but you know, once you add them all together, then you know, it's like a death by 1,000 cuts. You know, now all of a sudden, you know, you have a massive problem in your hands, right?
Right.
So I would like us to have, you know, some stringent rules or requirements in our municipal code coming from the transportation safety commission or like, right, that says, you know, yeah, any project, you know, you consider, you know, here is what you need to do, right? Versus, you know, trying to just fly under the radar, right?
Well, so the way that the guidelines and actually the VTA has put together some pretty detailed guidelines for evaluating traffic impacts for development is the developer would be required to look at several scenarios. There'd be kind of the, you know, existing traffic with the project, but in order to guard against what you described, they would also be required to look at it's like, yeah, it's called a background scenario and a build out scenario where you take all the developments that you expect to happen in the city, say in the next 5 years, include that traffic and the development traffic and see what the impact is there. So you are looking at them as a whole, and you don't get into the situation where any development can like just barely.
Yeah, right.
So it's meant to kind of guard against that happening. Yeah.
Like, for example, we'll take the maximum, there's a 14 unit,
Right.
condo or something that's coming. There's a single family home there.
Right.
It's a 23 or 28 unit condo. That street is messed up already with serving, you know, 4 schools.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have no idea now how those 28 unit condos are going to back in and out of that street, right? So I would like to see, you know, something done about it because, you know, it creates a mess for, you know, everybody. We live in the city, right? So,
Yeah.
So, reduction in cut through traffic. That this is, you know, the traffic flowing through the city, like, you know, to get somewhere else, right?
No, what this refers to is like residential neighborhoods. So if there's let's let's say there's a large amount of traffic on Stevens Creek Boulevard in a certain area, that people will cut through the neighborhood to go around that
Okay.
instead of, I guess you could make the same argument that, De Anza Boulevard, people
Yes.
cut through on De Anza to avoid Highway 85.
Yeah, 85,
Yeah,
they
following.
exit on Stevens Creek.
Yeah.
Get on, Dianza and, Prospect, and they go all the way south, get back on 85, right? So are there ways, that we can kind of mitigate that? Like, how do we, protect against, that kind of a freeway traffic, spilling over onto the track streets?
It's very difficult to do that. So the way that you do that in residential neighborhoods is you create impediments so that you make it more inconvenient for people to go the cut through route than to stay on the street. So you'll put in speed humps, you'll put in diverters. Berkeley was famous for doing this sort of thing 30 years ago, right? So you literally either can't wind through the neighborhood, or you just make it so frustrating and time consuming that you'd rather just sit in traffic on the main street. We can't obviously do that like on De Anza Boulevard. We can't make traffic there more challenging so that people stay on the freeway. Because that's just going to mess up the other, the rest of the people that need to use De Anza to get from point A to point B. It's a very challenging.
Two more questions have been done. My apologies. So I like the bike lane that you showed in the project evaluation. It's like for Golden Gate Avenue, right? Because that kind of a separation allows for bikers to be safe. At the same time, the cars, there's enough separation between those, and and without creating a hindrance. And that's what we should be looking at for our city, right? Because I've seen even in San Francisco, they went down the path of the separated blocks and all that stuff, and then they're reverting back to what you have shown in that picture, right? Because that allows for a free movement safely, both cars as well as the bikers. That's just my take, right? So, and then you asked a question about like to solicit some kind of bike commission input or guidance on for the city, like what's the good, right? I think for us, to be it should start with what is it we are trying to achieve, right? What are the goals? And so the goals for this commission is like zero fatalities or whatever, right? Like the vision zero, right? And then enhance the movement of people, be it cars and bicycles, right? So we gotta have establish the goals. Then we know what to do to achieve the goals. Like for example, right? If our goal is not see other than De Anza and Stevens Creek, I don't see a need for cars to be going beyond 25 miles an hour on any other street. Those are the only two streets where cars can go 40 or 45, 50, right? 40 and 45, right? So there's no reason for the cars to be going on any other streets along, right? And I see on my street, sometimes cars flying by 60, right? So what is it we can do? Because I was watching one, and I was like, wow, this guy is going to hit someone, and luckily nothing happened, right? So we could take measures to calm down the traffic speed on the back streets. They're like, we have the speed bumps, right? So could we do that everywhere, right? So that way, none of the streets, you ever allow, somebody to go at that speed, right? So that will safeguard, everybody, people that live on those streets and people that are crossing those streets, right? So we need to establish goals, what we are trying to achieve. Then, that will drive, outcomes and, the actions.
Thank you.
Anything else, Joel?
I have one general question, is, you think that, a lot of this resource intensive data collection this would be a perfect, something perfect for AI to handle, isn't it? I mean, isn't that under development now for using AI to really
And
to,
LiDARs, right? Yeah.
to analyze all this? I mean, instead of having humans involved, and you could have data collection, much more frequently and without.
I actually thought, I was under the impression that the new intersection of Wolf and Stevens Creek Boulevard has video capabilities, so we would be able to monitor for bicycles individually separate from
It does.
pedestrians.
That's one of the intersections that we can,
And is that technology, it sounds like that's where you're going here.
Yeah, something like that. Maybe there's
Mhm.
some company that developed a standalone technology, you buy the box and you put it up and.
yeah, no, there's the counts can be determined automatically by the software now with certain systems. Yes. Yeah, that's not always the case, but it is the case that at many locations. So it depends on the system that's used and what the data is you're looking for and the location.
Is it capable of collecting like everything like speed and, people that don't stop right on right turn on red and all this stuff. That would, I
Not,
think that would be something.
not yet reliably. Yeah, at some point it might be. And then there's still the question of how accurate is it? When I've been playing with the data from Wolf and Stevens Creek, actually, just recently, and it gives what looks like really good data, say for bike counts. But is it accurate? I don't know yet. It looks like it's pretty fairly accurate, but we need to go out. And I don't think we've had a chance to do that. But actually sit there and count for a couple hours or watch the video for a couple hours and then go back and see what the algorithms are telling us and make sure that they align. And if I'm hoping they do. But there's always that, you don't know how accurate the video is because it has to be able to really identify this as a bike compared to this as a car. And depending on the lighting conditions and positioning on the street, and there's all sorts of things that can mess with that. So, but it certainly is something that is somewhat possible now, and improvements I'm sure will come.
Even if the error margin is, let's say, 15%, it's still better than no data.
Yeah.
Unless it's complete random.
Right.
The other question, are speed cameras only, they're not allowed, Cupertino couldn't put up speed cameras.
Not for citation.
I know San Francisco, Oakland, and San Jose can, but,
You have to, it has to be done through a legislative action in the state currently as like a pilot program in order for a city to be able to do that. And several of the big cities, like you just mentioned, have gone that route and are able to do it. But most of the small cities, including Cupertino, we are not legally able to.
But that's only for citation, it would be allowed. For monitoring and measurement, it would still be allowed.
I would imagine, if it's just for information gathering.
Yeah.
It would be fun.
That's what we're looking for here.
Yeah.
but San Francisco, I know started out just. I don't know if they started just sending out warnings at first, but then, but that was, you could collect a lot of data. I know that they send out tickets if you're 11 miles and over the speed limit. And they've been sending out a lot of tickets.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Several, like over 100,000 within a very short period of time. So I mean, it seems like that's a good tool, but that's sort of data collection, but it's also enforcement.
Yeah. And I don't know enough about how those systems work, or how accurate they are, or how much data they can collect currently, but I can research that.
Great. I had a question on the VTA congestion management program. Is that only for cars, or are they also counting other things other than cars?
It's for cars. It's a vehicle.
And the program that we are launching in Cupertino here, that's kind of funded, I think, with 150K or something like that.
That was our request. We haven't received that money. It has not been approved in the council budget
I
yet,
see.
but that was our estimation of.
And that is only vehicles as well. That's only,
No, that would include, a wider variety of data. So that would potentially include some bicycles.
oh, that's wonderful. That is wonderful. That will be excellent. Yeah, so I think I'm gonna just take the moment now to ask for any comments or questions from the public, if there are any.
So I was wondering, some of these data sets that you mentioned that the city collects that both in Stevens Creek, are these available to them?
They're currently not available to the public. Yeah, it's just raw data at this point. But once I get to the point where I'm able to confirm that it's a good data, basically, we are going to find a way to put some kind of a dashboard or something on our website so that public will be able to.
Do we have any questions online?
No.
So then let's go back to the commission for recommendations and thoughts about what we are thinking about. I mean, I think one of the main reasons I believe we are trying to get some more data is to make better decisions about prioritizing projects. Especially with the ATP, we wanted to see what are the top projects that we should be funding, that we should be implementing. And I think without having kind of traffic data, we're missing a big part of the decision matrix, so to say. So I think that's why I think the question why data gathering, I think is not necessarily a good one. I think it's kind of the question is more, how do we get the data? And I think that's really the question I think that we should be focusing on. What is the tools and systems and kind of infrastructure that we need to build or invest so that we can actually gather the data and use this for decision making. And I see your point when you say it takes years to establish, but if we don't start, we will never get there. I think I agree, it probably will take 2 years, 3 years to establish a baseline, but then we can build from there. And that's why I'm personally kind of quite keen to really start more aggressively building a base of data and a foundation of data. And if we have those cameras, those intersection systems in place, can we replicate them? Is this a cost question, or what is it actually that's causing us to kind of not be more aggressive about it?
So I would like to see the active, I think the active transportation plan is going to be addressing the issues that are from the Vision Zero plan, as far as trying to reduce pedestrian and bicycle fatalities.
It will be incorporating the goals and concepts.
So,
Yeah. But one of the purposes of the ATP is to improve safety for cyclists and pedestrians.
and they will be making recommendations about how, to achieve that via data, maybe via this data collection. Is that correct?
Well, the safety enhancements will be achieved through, I mean, the data itself doesn't enhance safety. So the safety is going to be enhanced through project recommendations in terms of infrastructure changes, programmatic recommendations relating to, education programs or things of that nature. So data by itself doesn't do anything. It's what you do with the data.
So I'm just thinking, okay, so, as a pedestrian, I walk a lot in Cupertino, and I walk on Stephen Street Boulevard, and I also walk on Dianza. And I'm fine when I'm not at the intersection, but there's a whole series of intersections that are both those boulevards that are not very good. Now, they will be making, so you would think they'd want to collect, we're talking about data collection before and after an improvement, but it seems to me that if we make it safer, then you're going to increase the capacity of, you're going to see more active, more pedestrians, more cyclists after the fact. So we won't be using this data and say, well, not many people cycle on this section. Why make any improvements? So I'm trying to figure out where we're going with this data collection, because I could look at it and say, well, I don't see any cyclists here. Well, I don't cycle on Lawrence Expressway, even though it has a bike lane, because if you've ever been over there, it's like a kamikaze. You have to have a death wish to be on that. So that expressway could use improvements. I'm sure there's cyclists that would use that, but they never get any improvements. So in Cupertino, what I would like to see is improvements that make it easier to of course move through the city and to enhance cycling and pedestrian safety. I think is probably even in my mind more important, especially in an aging community that we have here. So when we're collecting all this data, I'm not sure sometimes we're actually going with it, saying, okay, we've got this data that shows that, this particular improvement has resulted in a reduction in level of service. But that doesn't, does that factor in the improvement, say, the fact that it probably will be safer if if you slow people down, the level of service becomes a little bit more congested, the level of service drops. And then you say, well, the data showing, it's not as smooth. Well, that's, in my mind, that may be an important trade-off for the safety, So I'm a little confused about, okay, I see collecting data is always important. I'm an engineer. But I also see the fact that we have to be, our goal here on the commission is to improve the bicycle and pedestrian safety. And if I had more complaints as a cyclist, I cycle a lot, but I also walk a lot. Pedestrian safety here it's got a big intersections. It's scary. It really is. And so I don't need any data collection to tell me that, quite frankly. I know it's not good. It's Stevens Creek and Deanza, Stevens Creek and Blaney. So I'm a little concerned when I hear, yeah, I'm for data collection, I'm for looking at the data, but how is that data going to be used to maybe not put a project in? Is that something that we're seeing here? I mean, I don't.
Well, that goes to my point in that slide is what do we do with the data? How is it going to be used and for what purpose? Because it's a lot of resources and potentially a lot of money. So it should have good value for something. So want that to be thought of as the programs develop.
So I have a couple of comments. So one, I think, on the data collection side, outside of, the main streets like Stevens Creek and Deanza, those are given, right? There's going to be tons and tons of traffic on that, right? So there's nothing we can do, right? But then outside of that, the remaining Cupertino streets, we should have, stack rank list of streets that say, here is the street that ranks number one in terms of, vehicles traveled or whatever, right? You can have the number, right? Like, 10,000 vehicles a day or 5,000 vehicles a day or whatever, right? And next week, right? So if we have stack rank streets in terms of, the sheer volume of traffic that goes through, except the dead end streets, right? Dead end streets, nobody's going to go there, right? It's only people that live on those streets go, right? But the pass through streets, we should be able to, get that data, right? So once we have the data, then, we can say, okay, what's the problem we are trying to solve, right? Like, how do we make it safe for everybody? Not only, the cars, but pedestrians and bicyclists and all that, right? So, and then we can prioritize, where we want to tackle first, right? It could be a street that with a lot of school going kids and, and a lot of cars, right? Good example would be Bub, right? Bub Road carries a lot of cars, but at the same time, there are a lot of school going kids as well, right? That might bubble to the top of the list, right? In terms of whatever we want to do, right? So that's kind of, how I would approach it, right? In terms of, data collection on every Cupertino street, except, the dead end streets, and then the stack ranking them on trying to see, what those needs and what needs, right? So that's one.
So if I can just ask a clarifying question, so what type of data specifically would
Like, for example,
want to collect? Would it be volumes or
the volumes, right?
Right.
So and because that data will tell us, what to expect, as issues on those streets, right? So and we can. I don't want us to go solve a problem that doesn't exist, right? I want us to identify the problems and go after, right? So, and then the other one regarding the safety, right? I bike a lot, right? So, and the biggest challenges that I see when I come back, right? So on Homestead, when I'm coming towards, like Wolf and all that, right? Those shopping complexes, the entry and the exit is the most dangerous ones. Say on Deanza, right? Right. So the entry exit of, all these shopping complexes is the most dangerous ones. And the reason for that is, twofold, right? One, the people that are trying to enter into those complexes, they try to swipe off the bike Like, they don't yield to the bikers and they don't stop. They try to race and, get out of the biker, right? That's a problem. That happened a lot, right? And two, the cars that are trying to exit these parking lots, they try to stick, their nose into, the bike lane and, and they're trying to get into the street. And if you have, you're separated bike lane, you're screwed, you're stuck there. You cannot even go around there. So I find these shopping complexes, on these streets as the most dangerous places, to bike. And I try to avoid that. So, however, we can find a solution to that, I'm all for it.
I have a similar idea of adding more metrics. Those who are injuries per year, like we are talking fatalities, accidents. How about injuries, minor injuries or serious injuries? And also complaints per area per month. So there could be a near accident, but it's a dangerous driver at a certain area. If we keep track of that data, probably if it should.
Sometimes, we don't even have the data for, people don't report, right? Like a few years ago at McClellan and Dianza exit, one kid was, completely uprooted by an SUV. I was watching there and, and I just got out of my car and ran to help the kid. And, that kid just walked up and, stood up and went away. I was like, sit, I want to see, if you're all right and all that. Right. So, and then my car, left on the signal, there are cars honking because when I got out of the car to go and help the kid, right? So things like that happen, right? And that's a no right turn on red area. But I don't think, that signal or the sign is visible. We can do a lot in terms of, I've seen some places where there's a flashing, no right on red thing. Maybe, we need to install those kind of things, so that, we prevent people from making those mistakes. I've seen quite a places where, the no right on red is confusing because, some of them have, for example, the time written on it. Like, within this time window, you cannot do it. Outside this time window, you can do it, right? Like you can take, the McClellan and Sterling and Bob, right? So McClellan and Bob. So you see that, there's a time there, when you can make a right turn, when you cannot make a right. Not everybody pays attention to it, right? So, and it's hard to read, right? So if you really have, a flashing sign that says, no, you cannot make a red because it's a Sunday or Monday, this time or that time, then people naturally, yeah, it's flashing red, so I better not cross. So these are some minor things, but goes a long way, to help with safety of, everybody involved.
I guess I would just reiterate, I'm still, if you look at the Division Zero study, 70% of all the KSIs were associated with 7 corridors in Cupertino. And those are the real corridors that allow the cyclists to get through the city. And so, when I look at it, okay, you've got if we're trying to, as a commission, say, well, we don't want to see a level of service reduction. I think that's probably going to conflict with the increase in safety that you would like to see on those boulevards. I mean, I've heard a lot in the last few months about the Stevens Creek and Wolf intersection. So I've walked that probably, hundreds of times. And that was a definite improvement. The work that was done that from a pedestrian standpoint was a definite improvement. Doesn't allow, I think what makes people upset there, they can't turn right going southbound on Wolf onto Stevens Creek. They don't have that, I don't know what it's called, the
Slip lane.
slip lane. But it just makes it a lot safer for a pedestrian, because, I walked it before that was put in and I've walked it after many times. And so these are the things that I'm all for, like I said, I'm all for collecting data. I think data is always important just to be it's information. But to use it to say, well, I don't want to see it used to say we're not going to do something because it's going to reduce the level of service, or somebody's going to be unhappy because when you increase safety, people become unhappy. Look what San Francisco's done. They've because they can't, their actual KSIs have gone up, even though they implemented a Vision Zero program 10 years ago. So they have like 200 intersections near the I think it's more heavily traveled areas in the financial district that are no right turn on red because pedestrians keep on getting hit. And then the next level is they go in with these speed cameras and because they're trying to get, car people drive too fast. So I don't need data to tell me that, I can tell you people drive too fast on Stevens Creek Boulevard and Deanza because I walk it. I mean, there's, in fact, sometimes at night they're going 60, 65 miles an hour. So when there's very little traffic. But so my point of view would be, I'm for data. I'd like to look at the data. But I also think safety has to be a strong competing consideration.
And I don't think it's a single one of them. I think it's a combination of all. And I think if you just limit it to the major corridors, then you may miss out a big opportunity. I think you don't want to limit yourself as a commission just to the major corridors.
I agree with that somewhat, but I think yet the data we have says 70% of KSIs are in these 7 corridors.
Then we should rename our commission to the 7 corridors.
Well, it's like there's another 30%, of course, but you've got to go where the KSIs are occurring. And so it's.
Yeah. Any other thoughts or comments for David?
So what's the next steps?
So the next step is, well, we're continuing to research costs and types of products that are, and we're also, like I said, working with our consultant on the ATP to develop a program that will be proposed within the ATP. So we're going to bring the ATP back to this commission August or September. So next month or the following month. And I'm going to try to have something by then related to this that we can discussion. So that will sort of follow up what we've discussed today, as well as then you can weigh in on the program that's being recommended within the ATP at whatever level it happens to be at that time.
Maybe one thing I would recommend is we do continue to look. So the VTA has published this. They do a bicycle count every year in a very consistent manner, and so they have the data now for years to go back in various locations throughout San Jose. And I don't know exactly what the cost of that is, how expensive that is. But it would be worthwhile to take a look because that allows them to make good decisions about bicycle and pedestrian projects. And I think we're lacking that part. So I think I would highly encourage us to look at this. It was published, I think, called the CMP Monitoring and Performance Report.
That's what I was referring to.
Okay. And that's, I don't know if other cities do that as well, but I was super impressed when I saw this from San Jose. The exact numbers about bicycles in many spots in the city. I would say that is something that we should definitely look at gathering. Well, if there's no more comments, I think there's no motion needed for this item here, so I think this is really was more just an informal discussion. If we had, then I want to close this topic and move on to our next item tonight, which is the staff update and commission activity report. Do you have anything there?
Yeah, I have a couple of items I wanted to bring. Actually, we have online a collision, speaking of data.
Did we put out some data for public consumption on,
Can I?
did we put out some data already?
So we have data on collisions.
Okay, because somebody called me.
Yeah, so that's what I want to show you here.
I was trying to locate it.
Yeah, and maybe I should go back to and walk you through the path to get there. To this. Why does that keep happening? It's gotta be, how do you?
Looks like some East Coast streets.
This is.
Misty.
Yeah, yeah. Second.
Okay, so, so we have this collision dashboard that we've just made live on our website. And this is really great because for 2018 to 2024, it shows you every reported collision in the city. So you can see all the data there, and you are able to filter this by as many ways as you can think of. So it's got graphs, so you know, by year, severe injury, fatal, so you can see the trends over the years, collision type, you know, rear end, broadside, side swipe. If you want to look at just bicycle accidents, you can click on the bicycle there and it'll show you only the bicycle accidents. And the colors represent the extent of the injury. You can kind of see that the pie chart here will change accordingly to how you filter it. So, you know, 96 visible injury, 40 complaints of pain.
It's on our city website.
This is on our city website, yeah, so you can go and play with this as much as you want to and see all sorts of interesting data about where the accidents are occurring, what type of accidents. Again, this is 2018, 2024. You can also filter by date.
Can you go back to the total overall, remove the filters, like. Yeah, you know, I think, you know, you filtered down the bar charts, you know, down blue and purple bar, yeah. Yeah, let's remove the filters, yeah.
Okay,
So the blue columns represent what? Severe injury, right?
so, well, the light blue is property damage only.
Yeah, yeah. Now I'm talking about, you know, the bar chart, not the pie chart, right? So the one that below,
It's the
right?
same color.
So, severe, and the fatal count seem to have gone up, right?
Got it.
23 to 24, we have.
Yeah, but again, you know, when you're talking about 1 or 2 a year.
One or two.
Yeah.
That's not really meaningful.
And is this data for all kinds of mode of transportation, or is this limited to bicycle?
No, this is everything.
Everything.
Okay.
This is 100, 1,100,
accident.
well, yeah, and 1,950 collisions in
I see.
6-year span. Yeah. See, if you want to just see fatalities, let's see, I know there's a way to do this.
The collision types, you know, the counts, right? Yeah, on the right, bottom right, so not that one, the collision types. Yeah, the bottom right corner, the bar chart,
That's what I clicked.
The orange
orange one.
the orange. No, it's.
Oh, okay. So, okay, yeah, so those are the fatalities over the last 6-7 years.
Yeah, it looks like it's gone up, right? Like, you know, it used to be 1, now we're averaging 2, right? So.
Well, yeah, it used to be. I don't know if you were to go 10 years even further back, who knows, maybe those are 2s, so.
And
Again,
collision type
when
on
it
the-
only changes by 1 per year, that's not.
What's the collision?
Is it because of COVID or what?
Collision types, vehicle pedestrian. Is this,
So it's pedestrian fatalities mostly.
Yeah.
Yes.
and these others, these are most likely vehicle, or there's gotta be, I know there were some bicycles.
also.
For bicycles
Yeah.
also, we should see if there's a way to.
You got on the dot. Click on the dot, then it should do it.
Oh, yeah, so if you click on the dot, it'll give you the details of the accident. So this is vehicle pedestrian at this location. I think, see, there was a vehicle. Yeah, vehicle bike accident up here. So it gives you all the information, time, day, everything you'd ever want to know about collision as far as
It's a good data,
from the police collision report.
spend some time.
So, yeah, so I just wanted to report that that's live so that, And if you wanna,
Get the URL, or how do we find?
yeah, so that's the next question. So you go to, so if you go to our, so you go to the main city webpage,
Yeah.
your city departments where Public Works, okay, transportation and mobility. So let's see.
So it's on the
Can you go and search in the search box, like,
Yeah,
the home page?
it's there, yeah.
Even like City of Cupertino collision dashboard.
Yeah.
Vision dashboard, so.
Okay.
Yeah, vision, yeah, it's there right there.
Okay.
Zero.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, we'll find it.
Oh, it's good. Anyway, you do that. It's-
Yeah, that's great.
Search is the easy.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Navigating the.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so, and then my second report out this evening is, the Lawson Bikeway is under construction or being, completed as we speak, so it's about half done now. The primary striping is in. They still have to come back, and do some of the green and the posts, but the basic layout is all done in thermoplastic, so it looks real nice, so check it out.
Do we have any data on the Mary biking, like between the Stevens Creek and the Don Barnett Bridge? Right, I know we did a lot of improvements there,
Yeah.
so I just want to see, what is it look like, the data, right, before and after.
Yeah, I do have, I haven't done bike counts on Mary in a while. I know I did bike counts on the bridge, several years ago. And I know that we've been looking at the Strava data as part of the ATP.
Yeah.
And it's a heavy red core, all along, very highly used,
Highly used, okay.
very highly used.
And so that means the traffic that comes over the Burnett Bridge is also coming on.
A lot of it goes down, yeah, crosses the bridge, goes down Mary to Stevens Creek, and then a lot of it goes over towards Foothill.
Yeah, I feel good about, the improvements done there, but I don't know if everybody feels the same way, right? I used to avoid that, but now I don't mind using that. If I'm going to go, I sometimes, travel that route, and I feel comfortable compared to, what it was before.
Mhm.
But I want the data to support it.
Yeah.
Not just, how I feel about it.
Right. Yeah, I think that's one area I need to do some bike counts sooner rather than later.
And what is that Strava data? Can you have access to?
We had to request it specially, and Matt Schrader has it, so I can ask him, and I can share.
Talking about data from all bicyclists that are using it?
That use, yeah.
See, so, if Strava is the main service out there, right, let's assume, is there a way you can purchase data from there, like, we have
They gave us a lot of data, yeah. Yeah, we have a lot of good data from them, so we're just starting to kind of go through and see what it's showing,
I
but,
think it's super helpful.
It is.
It limits ourselves to the more professional
Mhm.
bikers. It's part of the recreational bikers, it's probably not.
Yeah.
So it's probably under reporting actually.
yeah, I'm sure it is, yeah. And that's all for my,
When is the ATP coming back to the commission? Is
probably next month,
August?
yeah, maybe September, but probably.
And what will they be presenting? I mean, it's going to be the draft version that.
So we've completed phase one of the outreach, and we're in the process of developing our project recommendations. So I'm thinking we will bring kind of some draft project recommendations, and we also want to start the discussion about the criteria that's going to be used to prioritize the project list.
Can I ask you to at least provide the materials that we're presenting that really as part of the invite, so that we have time to.
Yeah.
I'm sure this is gonna be a lot of information. I
Yeah.
would rather spend time before the meeting and kind of read it up there, so that we can have a little bit more substantial discussion about it.
Yeah, sure. I'll
Appreciate it.
I'll include it in the packet.
In the back. Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah, this presentation, looking at this presentation ahead of time was helpful, right? So.
Yeah, I'll try to make sure to do that.
Great. Thank you. Anybody, any other staff reports? I think you have no VTA report today, so we should probably skip that for tonight. That brings us to the future agenda setting. So this is the section where we talk about next topics.
I'll change this to August or September because.
That's going to be ours.
Mhm.
But let's put August for.
I think Vision Zero we covered already last meeting, didn't we?
Yeah, we covered that. I think it was 2 meetings ago.
But then I think we were saying we wanted to build this workforce. I guess that's probably.
The task force, yeah, we're working on getting the task force hopefully by September. So once we get that, I think
So,
we'll come back.
So now that we have the Vision Zero traffic data, right? So could we get, some kind of staff version of, here's what this is telling us, right? Like the data and visualization and all, that's all one thing, right? But it's, what do you get out of that? Right?
Interpretation.
Yeah,
The collision data?
yeah.
Mhm.
Like,
What are we meaning?
how do
Well, that's what the Vision Zero document and the local road safety plan are all about, is taking the data.
I was thinking like, feed that thing to ChatGPT and tell it, like, what do you want me to do with it?
You
right?
guys in ChatGPT,
I think that's a really good point. I think what are the 5 messages that we should take away from that collision report? I think
Yeah.
it's a really good. I
yeah,
don't know.
well, again, that's why we did the Vision Zero, is to really dive deeply into that data and make recommendations based upon it.
Yeah. So I was like, see, this is what data is telling us, and here's what we should be doing, right, based on this.
I think the benefit of the data would be that it gives us a little bit more specific where we think the priority should be. And that's hopefully captured in the ATP anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want to change to September? or-
I would. No, probably later than that.
November?
Because we're gonna
November,
be,
December.
I don't know, put October for now.
I think we were saying in September, we want to have the task force in place. Any other additions, removals, modifications?
We'll see what for the next meeting.
Yeah. Is there any public comment on those on this list here? Any recommendations to the public? No? If there's no more discussion, then I'm gonna close this topic as well. And that brings us to the next item of the agenda, which is the adjournment. It's 8:16, meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Yep.